Now today is Thursday, and I have a Spearhead tournament on Saturday. I could make it easy on myself and bring my Ogrema tribes, or my Yandrasta Spearhead, or my Skaven Claw Pack, but I've played all those guys in tournaments before. Maybe I make it really hard on myself, and I try to build a brand new one in 2 days. This is the Mortesian Elite, the new Spearhead for the Ossiarch Bone Reapers, and it's only 9 models. Now they're 9 really big models, but maybe it's possible to get them all built, based, and painted really nicely in 2 days. I would really like to play with these guys, so I'm gonna go for it. Cracking open this box, that's a lot of sprue. This is not the first Bone Reaper Spearhead. The old one was all about the rank and file infantry. This one is all about the big boys, the elite. I started off with the hero, the smallest guy in the force. He doesn't do much compared to the rest of the monsters, but he does make the discipline rolls, the special ability of this force, much more likely to go off. So it's important to keep him around, but safely away from the action. He can also heal my monsters. I really like how the sand and bones swirling around him makes him feel bigger and more impressive. As the Ossifactor, he is the mechanic of the Bone Reapers, repairing broken bones on the fly. Now onto the big chickens, the Morghast Archai. These are the most powerful bone constructs of the Ossiarch. They guard the leaders of the Boner Boys. These guys have monstrous spears/swords that have a little gap while I was putting them together, so I fixed this with some Tamiya plastic putty. I cleaned up all the parts and threw them into a little cup. I'm not exactly sure on the posing yet, so I'll wait to finish putting these guys together. Next up, I have to build both of these tall boys, the Necropolis Stalkers and the Immortus Guard. The Stalkers are really fun in game. They throw a ton of good attacks. And the Ossifactor can give them crit 2 hits, giving them even more attacks. These guys were a little tricky to put together. The parts are pretty abstract, and I don't usually like to do this, but I really had to read the instructions and follow them closely. I clipped and prepped all the bits, but I still can't put them together yet, because I don't know exactly what poses will be best. These models are funky. I was imagining they'd be a lot like the Necrons, and they kinda are, but they're a little bit more abstract, and so you gotta dry fit everything just to make absolutely sure you've got it the right way before you glue it together. But speaking of gluing together, I haven't really been doing a lot of that because I think there's actually a lot of posability in these guys, and I want those poses to be perfect, so I think to get them actually done, I need these bases done. These big models stand on some really big bases. I swapped out the Crummy Games Workshop ones for beautiful, perfect Cobalt Keep bases. These are really nice because they have slots in the bottom for magnets, so my minis can be ready for transport immediately. Opening up the little clamshell full of magnets, they launched out and stuck to one of the pins on my apron. And you know what else they stick to? The amazing new display cases coming soon from Cobalt Keep. You already know them, you already love them for their other fantastic products like Ready Fit magnet bases or their amazing sprue nippers. But today, Cobalt Keep is putting out an all-new product, a range of army display cases that are perfect for showing off your whole collection. Already on offer are these single mini hero and cavalry display cases, and now with these new cases you can store your whole collection in these large-scale displays that can be assembled within minutes. 3mm of clear solid polycarbonate means your minis will be shown off and protected. And no need to worry about tipping over all your models. The steel base in the display case means your models on magnetized bases are in no danger of jostling around. These cases are stackable too, meaning they're easy to move around, and as a fun little extra, you can even keep your smaller Cobalt Keep cases inside these. A little locking clip ensures you can take your army on the go in the cases with no fear of them falling off. Show up to your game store in style. Right now, Cobalt Keep is running a Kickstarter campaign where you can pick up these beautiful display cases at a great price. Pick the pledge level your army needs to give it the display case it deserves. This is their 6th successful Kickstarter campaign, so your satisfaction is guaranteed. I know I'm satisfied to have a cool new place to store my minis. Head on over to their page to see which display case is right for you. Big old bases like these are hard to fill up. I think for my boners, a nice cliff base would look good. I took some 1/2-inch cork and glued down random chunks all over the base, carving angles into them with a saw. I tore up the edges to reveal the rough texture of the cork. Now that I have a surface, I can stick down my minis. I drilled up into the feet of my boners, sticking in some 1mm brass rod and then stabbing it down into the cork. The legs have these dimples that help line them up with the hips, but if I cut these off, I can get more posability. I stuck down my guy, fussing with him while the plastic glue was still drying until I was really happy with the pose. I put down lots of ultra thin super glue over his feet to make sure he's stuck down. Now that I know where his feet go, I can fill in the rest of the base with more of the cork scrap. And for the in-between parts, I sprinkled in some pebbles, locking them down with more super glue. I took some sand and scooped it onto the base, pouring it over the cork and letting it pool up. Then I poured some ultra thin super glue over top to seal it in place. Using this much super glue throws up a lot of fumes, so it's best to do this in a well-ventilated room. It does create a very realistic finish though. I put the rest of the squad onto their bases and they were looking pretty snazzy. I centered them and put them a little bit back so there was plenty of room for the arms. And these guys have so many arms, 4 arms each. I left them loose so I could find the arms that really match the leg poses I've made. I think mine turned out a little better than the box art ones. The last step is the heads, and this is the hardest thing a Games Workshop kit has ever asked me to do. Glue in the 4 microscopic faces into a little tiny ball. Eventually, after a lot of dropped faces, I got them all glued up. 1 out of the 4 squads is done, the Necropolis Stalkers. These guys are my favorite in the spearhead. Look at these General Grievous looking guys. About half the day has slipped away, which is not great, but I've gotten quite a bit done. And my plan is, by the end of the day, I'll have everything built, everything based, and a little bit of paint on. If I can have a little bit of paint on there by the end of today, I'll really be in a good spot. Next up, the Murder Chickens. These guys are on 60mm bases. I gave them the same cork towers as my slightly smaller guys, making sure to leave plenty of room for their ghostly wings. None of their feet touch the base, they hang from their wings. I finished assembling the guys so I could see just how far these spears stick out. I always try to get as much of the mini over the base as possible. These guys overhang pretty bad, although luckily the spear is up so high it'll be hanging above just about anything he'll end up in combat with. I glued them down and then filled in all the extra spaces with a lot more sand and glue. I can't tell if these guys are silly or badass. Maybe a little bit of both. These guys are a lot bigger than I thought they were gonna be. Holy moly, these are big. Only 6 wounds apiece. They feel really big for 6 wounds. I mean, this is bigger than a Sentinel. This is getting to Dreadnought size, but more than halfway done now. I think next I'll put together the Shield Boys. The Shield guys are the other half of the Necropolis Stalkers. They are dedicated to all things defensive, although the shields could be a little bigger. It's interesting that all things in the Ossiarch Bone Reapers are made of bones, so do these guys feel weird when they pick up a sword and shield? Like, are they also made of their flesh? Are the weapons like pets? Who's to say? Now that I know exactly what I'm doing with the basing, these guys went together pretty fast. I built up their bases and then decorated them to match so that they really look like they mean business. They will defend the Ossifactor to their second death. Technically, the Ossiarch souls are made of a bunch of different souls blended together, so they have died a lot of times before becoming a boner. Luckily, these heads aren't nearly as obnoxious to build as the Stalkers, so in no time I had these guys done. It was getting pretty late, however. Oh, I came so close to getting them all built and based today. The only thing left is the hero on a base, and then they're done. These are some big, big boys. The reason that I wanted this spearhead is I wanted a death spearhead, and basically all of the other spearheads were claimed by my friends, so this is the one available to me. But now that I've put them together, I really, really like them. The boner boys, these big, chunky dudes. I'm pretty excited. Am I gonna be able to get it all done tomorrow? We'll see. All right, I'm back, I'm energized, I got my tea, and I'm ready to attack these bones. And those bones are the reason I thought I could knock these guys out in record time because they're 90% bone. I've only gotta paint one color mostly, so could I get them all done today? I don't know, I'm feeling hopeful. First, I need to finish up the Ossifactor, and for his base, I made Sean print me a Zabavka Workshop Remains base. This is a topper made to look like piles of old dry bones, the perfect thing for a bone shaper, and available from EonsOfBattle.com. EonsOfBattle.com is the place to find merch like our EOB dice, wet pallets, waterslide decals, and basing toppers and bits. It's also the best way to support us with memberships. Each month, members get a credit that they can use on our new monthly terrain packs or any previous pack we have ever made. This August, we're delving back into the world of fantasy with some deadly terrain, the Chaotic Cemetery Pack. A series of walls and sculptures depicting the haunting stillness of death and the brutal cruelness of chaos, made in the shapes and sizes needed for games of Age of Sigmar, Spearhead, Sand and Bone. These perilous walls are surrounded by a set of chaotic statues in the Icon of Change, the Likeness of War, the Bust of Decay, and the Effigy of Excess. The Chaotic Cemetery Pack was made by us and is available on our website as STL files or physically printed for you. And don't forget about our GameFound campaign. The project, The Catacombs of the Blessed Dead, an official collaboration between Eons of Battle and Trench Crusade, is in the pre-campaign right now. You can follow the link in the description below to find out more. After I glued down the topper, I sprinkled on some fine grained sand to fill in the in-between spot so it'll match the rest of my bases. And I dripped super glue over top to keep it all down. Now to attach my fella, I mixed up some green stuff and stuck little balls under his cloth. He's floating magically over the base, but he still needs to be anchored, and this will give just enough squish to get him attached. I stuck him down and did his magic in the same way, using some more green stuff to bridge the gap between the plastic and resin. I sprinkled on a little more sand to smooth the transition, making little chunks of sand traveling up the flowing magic as well. Now all my models are built, and built is good enough for gaming, but painting is obviously the goal. I want the bones nice and bright, so to start off I sprayed the bases with a black primer, giving them all 2 quick coats. Then I switched to a white primer and put this over all the bodies, letting it spill onto the bases as a zenithal to help me out later. To start out my bone color, I sprayed them all from underneath with a dark purple color to get some color into the recesses, and then I sprayed a dark tan color from above to pump up the saturation. Then I switched to a light tan and gave each guy a puff of this right on their heads and shoulders. Now they're looking pretty, but I want to bump up the contrast more, so I sealed in the flavor with some satin varnish and then thinned down some speed paint. I made up a watery mix of pallid bone and a separate pile of purple. Then I put these on, using the bone color on the tops and putting the purple underneath as a shade. This really brings out all the little details in the bone. I could stop here, but there's plenty of daylight left, so I'm feeling frisky. I'm going to highlight. I did a first round of highlights with some light tan, focusing on the upper bones, making them bright and crispy. And then I did a second smaller highlight of almost pure white on the edges to really get the bones looking ancient and dry. Comparing this to the unhighlighted boner, it definitely brightens them up a lot. If they are entirely bone, I can afford to spend some time perfecting the bones. After a considerable time, they were all boned up. I got the bones all done, and my hypothesis was correct. They are looking well on their way to finished. But speaking of finished, I am getting a little bit nervous. And so I actually think my next move is gonna be doing the bases. Finished bases does a really good job of making models look done, and so that's my strategy for trying to reach minimum viable product by the end of the day. I grabbed some grass tufts, 2 different sizes, small and smaller. I'm not worried about the color. I plan to paint over these, so I glued them down right over top of the primer, giving each base a good handful of these. Now for that color. I started out with a jade green, spraying this all over, and then to get them darker, I sprayed around the rim of the base with a dark jade color. This looked good, but I still want them darker and to bring more attention to the sand, so I made up a dark blue wash and put this all over everything. This is a bad guy faction, so I want the bases looking spooky. I used my hair dryer to try and speed up the process, and once they were dry, I dry brushed over top with my original jade color, and to pump up the color, I finished them off with the dry brushing of a brighter blue-green color. I've got the bases all done, and my boners are starting to look very lively. Now the question I have is, what color should the accents be? I did the bases in a jade green because I want to do the weapons in a jade green, but what color should their armor be? I don't think I can go too far wrong. I think anything would look good, but what is the correct color? And I think I've landed on it, and I'm gonna go with purple. I used purple for the shadow on their yellow bones, and so I think a little bit more purple will look good. I threw a nice bright purple all over the armor of these guys. They don't have much, so I just searched over each guy and gave them a good once over. With the purple on there, I started highlighting with pink. I pushed the highlights pretty far, which didn't quite work. I highlighted all the way up through pink into white, and this looked okay, but highlighting all the way to white was too close to the white highlights in the bones. I tried again, darkening with a really dark purple, and then doing smaller highlights up to a magenta, and this turned out much better. It gives a lot of color, but keeps these parts darker than the surrounding bone skin. Looking at these two side by side, for sure the darker and more saturated is better. I took what I now know and applied it to everyone else, like the murder chickens. They have the biggest armor with the most room for highlighting. Maybe some species in the mortal realms has purple bones. Or maybe the bone shapers mix pigments into the bones whenever they craft a new boner. Now with the armor done, it's time for those weapons. I know I want to go with jade, so I started base coating all the weapons. The sun went down a while ago, however, and I don't know how much more I can get done. I've made some extremely good progress on my boners, and I've got all of the weapons base coated, and I would like to sketch out all of the highlights and shadows like I did on the armor, but it's almost 10 o'clock and I don't have time to do that, so I'm gonna try to come up with something different, something clever, and hopefully something nice and quick. I put some white ink into my airbrush and sprayed this from above on all the weapons, using a playing card to shield the work I've already done for some of the danger spots. Then I took some white paint onto a sponge and sponged this on, getting a gritty texture. These are still made of bones infused with metal and death magic. Then I started spraying a little bit of purple speed paint near the handles of each weapon to get a stronger gradient going. Not bad, and a lot faster than anything else I could have done. A few of these guys have a sort of cloth hanging from their hips. I base coated these in a bloody red and then sponged on a darker red to make them look like gory flayed flesh. The LCR craft their bodies from bones, but they don't pressure wash them clean before they start crafting, so it's believable they're still bloody. Oh, I'm gonna call it there. They're basically done. I mean, they are done. There's a bunch of little things I would like to touch up, hit the eyes, clean up some of the brush strokes. I do really like how the weapons turned out, but they're totally wrong for this army. Those weapons look way too pretty, and I think after the tournament, I'm gonna get these guys back out and give them a little more TLC, and I think I'm gonna redo the weapons as like dark, rusty metal. That would feel much more appropriate for the Boner Boys, the bad guys. Although, speaking of them being the bad guys, I just finished the book End of Enlightenment, which is a Warhammer novel about the Lumineth Realm Lords versus the Ossiarch Bone Reapers. And in the book, you get a pretty good sense of what they are, and the Ossiarch Bone Reapers are actually super interesting. Coming into the Spearhead, I didn't know anything about them, and so I just assumed that they were skeletons, but they had extra skeleton in them to make them even stronger skeletons. But these guys are actually a new species for Age of Sigmar. To make a Bone Reaper, a body is made out of bones, but then a soul is manufactured out of other souls to create a new, unique life form. And it's such an interesting idea that the god of death, to make a new army, he invented life. Compare that to Sigmar, who's the god of man, and when he needed an army, he made an army of ghosts, the Stormcast Eternals, but the god of death invented life. In the book, you do get the perspective of the Ossiarch Bone Reapers from the commander in charge, and it's interesting, but they're so thoroughly under the control of Nagash that they're pretty much just the baddies trying to wipe out all life in the world. But it really got me thinking about, what if they weren't under the control of Nagash? What if this was just a brand spanking new civilization? What would they invent? What would they be like if they didn't just have to try to wipe out all life in the universe? I am very happy that I was right. I was able to basically get these guys all put together in 2 days. I almost just broke this guy. One more Spearhead added to the collection, and this is a death faction, so ward 6 up on all of these suckers. Now Sean's not the only one with a good ward save on all those guys. Luckily I don't have to play Sean tomorrow. Thanks for watching.